It's Muppeturgy, and brush up your Superman because we're here to discuss the Christopher Reeve episode of The Muppet Show.
Yay!
David, brush up your Cape Spear is right there.
Oh,
No, absolutely not.
damn.
Setting the tone for the evening.
No capes.
Anyway, everyone, hello, welcome back. I'm David Levy. We're so glad you're here with us. Here today with me are
Michala Richardson.
Adam Grossworth.
And Christy Bauer.
Here is a Muppet News Flash.
And this week we're talking about Season 4, Episode 18 of The Muppet Show. It was produced the week of January 22nd, 1980, and it aired in New York City on February 11th, 1980. It was 14th in the air order between Diane Cannon and Linda Carter. In the news, the Winter Olympics are starting in Lake Placid. Last episode, I believe the Winter Olympics were ending in Lake Placid because that's how time works on this podcast.
And in Superman.
And in Superman, right. New York flu outbreak at epidemic levels. MTA urged a way plan to cut subway crime.
Ah.
But this one I actually read. The plan suggests, among other things, suggests eliminating all token clerks between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m., allowing free ridership during those hours, and using any money saved for more police protection. I mean, not sure I feel about police protection, but like that's a really good idea. Apparently, the token clerks' salaries were much more than the system took in those hours. That never happened, to be clear. The Democratic National Convention will be in New York soon. Union workers at JFK have refused to service Aeroflot planes since the armed Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. A Soviet jet with passengers en route to the Olympics landed at JFK, where it was not supposed to. The Port Authority's Director of Aviation, Cesar B. Patarni, declared, "Everyone stays on the airplane. It'll sub there until it rots." A Deputy Assistant Secretary of State telephoned him and said, "I request that you facilitate this aircraft in the name of the State Department of the United States." And Mr. Paterni said he replied, "Okay, send me a telex." Christy, please include the line, "Okay, send me a telex" in your eventual musical about the Waldorf Astoria phone crisis.
On it.
This whole story is the action that takes place over the song, the epic song, I Thought I Was Having My Breakdown.
Adam, I think for many of our listeners, you might want to explain what a telex is.
I don't know.
A telex is a fax.
Thank you.
The brand name for fax that did not stick around like Xerox. The plane eventually went to Dulles in D.C., which was federally operated and, further away from Lake Placid. So there you go. Reminder, it is 1980, and this floored me. Many suburban communities worried about losing touch with their local police and fire departments are resisting the adoption of the 911 emergency number. But new technology shows the dispatcher where the call is coming from, making it possible for them to alert the appropriate department. In addition, officials have not been able to agree on whether county or municipal budgets should pay for 911. So at this point, New York City had 911 for 12 years, so I never knew a life without 911. But that just feels so late, and also so late for we'll send you somebody from somewhere, which seems like a problem in New York too.
I for sure grew up memorizing our hometown police station phone number. At some point, I must have learned about 911, and I don't know if it was that we got 911 or simply it was oh, you should also know this. But I mean, I still know what the phone number is for the Stoughton, Massachusetts police station because it's so...
Yeah, I remember there being numbers, maybe actually on the phone itself, the number for the local precinct and the local firehouse. But I also never had to use them. I knew what 911 was.
We were definitely taught 911, and it was definitely drilled into us in preschool because my sister knew to dial it when I was bothering her one time.
Oh, no.
Yeah, David, you had a different childhood than I did because I don't remember any of my local police or emergency service, but I do remember call 499-2222 and get a Mr. Gaddy's pizza delivered. So,
oh, well, that's equally important.
Pizza delivery didn't really come in where I grew up until I think I was in high school.
Wow.
Wow.
And even then, we never did it. If we wanted pizza, we would drive there and pick it up. But yeah, I mean, I'm just a little bit older than you, so that's part of it.
No, that still seems insane to me.
When I was in high school, my mom ordered from our local Papa John's somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 times. I'm not making that number up.
You kept track?
They tried to rezone our delivery area, and my mom called to order her twice weekly pizza, and they told her, "Oh, we don't deliver you to anymore." And she's like, "That's really strange." And then she hung up, and then 2 minutes later, the manager called and said, Yeah, so we were just looking, and you've ordered from us 342 times in the last 2.5 years. So we're going to make an exception for you.
Perfect. Love my friendly local closest facsimile to pizza available.
Anyway, in other the past news,
Put that on a t-shirt. That's the story of our podcast.
sure, but like this is a specific, that doesn't feel like it should have been so hard moment. Faced with the growing costs of processing and mailing out bank statements, a small branch of the Mercantile Safe Deposit and Trust Company of Baltimore is attacking the problem at its roots. It has stopped returning canceled checks to some customers. Shock, horror. It's a process that cuts off the normal cycle of check flow, and this will explain this to young people, from check writer to payee to bank and back to the check writer before it is completed. After the check goes through the banking system, we send the customer a statement listing in sequential order the check number and amount of the check and the date it was paid. What? And then they were storing the checks in case they needed to look them up, whereas now they would get scanned.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
I guess as with media production, if you're in banking, you can never keep enough paper and enough copy of things on enough pieces of paper.
There's a wild editorial. New Yorkers have been arriving in the land of Mork and Mindy, Boulder, Colorado, in droves. This town has bagels and claustrophobic nightclubs. While our backs were to the east trying to hold off the Californians with their skateboards and dune buggies, the eastern menace crept up, sustaining its advance into Colorado by flying pastrami in from Manhattan. Is it merely a coincidence that Boulder now has a psychiatric institute?
Wow.
Yeah.
So
this is like a warning shot published in a New York
This is a
newspaper, like,
person
"Don't come."
in Boulder who is upset about all of the New Yorkers coming. They seem to believe because of Mork and Mindy.
Just say Jews.
right, that's the
Yeah.
We don't want you with your bagels and pastrami.
It's psychiatry.
Stop sending your neurotic East Coasters. Yeah.
Yeah.
Woof.
In movies, Silent Scream, terror so sudden there's no time to scream, and The Electric Horseman, which is apparently a romantic comedy, and that is a terrible title for a romantic comedy. But they put it on the ad, so we knew. In theater, Joan Plowright stars in Philomena, which just opened, and the Bugs Bunny Sports Spectacular at the Felt Forum, which is now the theater at Madison Square Garden.
So they already did Space Jam?
Well, here's the thing. I am almost positive I saw this live. And yeah, it was like do they even still do these? Well, they still do Disney on Ice. Do they still do like the non-ice versions?
Like Sesame Street
Sesame
Live?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like with the big head characters.
I
would assume so. But anyway.
Sesame Street Live will be in Portland, Maine, April 16th.
Great.
Cool, let's go.
On the Cashbox Pop Charts, the number one song is Coward of the Country by Kenny Rogers, and the number one album is Pink Floyd's The Wall. Again, I lost track of time.
Still the word.
It's still The Wall. Still frickin'. On TV, on CBS, first up on the news, a killer's loose, but nobody's talking. Bowel cancer. This year it will claim 50,000 victims. Obviously a very important story. People need to know about colon cancer. I question the choice of
but bowel cancer. It's what killed my friend's dad, but this is a lot
there's
of
nothing
phrasing.
funny about bowel cancer, but I question the use of the phrase "a killer's loose." That's all.
Uh-huh.
Moving on. In primetime WKRP in Cincinnati, The Last Resort, MASH, House Calls, and Lou Grant. On ABC, Laverne and Shirley, followed by Angie. Have we talked about Angie? Or is that new in our timeline?
I think it might
It
be
rings
new.
a bell, but I don't know.
I feel like I would have remembered singing Angie in my head.
None of this rings a bell to me. Angie Falco is a middle-class Italian-American who marries the wealthy Brad Benson, and she soon learns how to adjust to her new lifestyle the hard way, starring Donna Pescow, Airplane's Robert Hayes, and Doris Roberts. And this episode guest starred Adrian Zmed, which is just fun to say. That was followed by The Deep Part 2. This is a 1977 movie, but they split it up into two parts like a miniseries by Peter Benchley, the author of Jaws, and also starring Robert Shaw, Jacqueline Bisset, Nick Nolte, Louis Gossett Jr., and Eli Wallach. On NBC, Little House on the Prairie.
Let's go. I'm so excited to hear about this one.
A surprise visit by Almanzo's younger brother leads Charles Ingalls to hope that Laura will switch her romantic attentions to the younger Wilder brother. Spoiler, did not work.
But what was better about the younger one?
He's more age appropriate. We talked about
was
this last
Almanza
week,
that much
actually.
older?
Almanzo is much too old for her, but it was, the prairie. So
Your options are limited.
he waited. It's all good. He waited till she was age appropriate or something.
Mhm.
That was followed by the American Movie Awards, which were hosted by David Frost and seemed to have been sort of a People's Choice thing. I remember the American Movie Awards like sticking around for a while, but I am not clear on whether voting happened always. The nominees for Best Film were Apocalypse Now, The China Syndrome, The Deer Hunter, Manhattan, and Rocky II, which is a pretty good lineup.
And our guest star tonight is none other than that fantastic film star, the man who plays Superman, Mr. Christopher Reeve. Yeah!
Christopher Reeve, actor, activist, Superman. Christopher Dolier Reeve was born in 1952 in New York City. On the child of privilege front, it is my duty to report that both Chris's father, F.D. Reeve, and his great-grandfather, Franklin Dolier, have their own Wikipedia pages. The father was an academic and a writer. The great-grandfather was a businessman and the first national commander of the American Legion. The grandfather in between them was the CEO of Prudential. Going even further back, he descends from some of the people who came over on the Mayflower, including William Bradford, who is one of the governors of Plymouth Colony. And I feel like, even though I didn't know this, just looking at him, I knew this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
checks out.
all checks out. You just look at his face. Yep.
Anyway, Chris grew up in Princeton, New Jersey, and he caught the theater bug as a child when he performed in an amateur production of Gilbert and Sullivan's The Yeoman of the Guard when he was 9 years old. At age 15, he was a summer apprentice at Williamstown Theater Festival, where he would remain deeply connected for pretty much the rest of his life. Despite wanting to pursue acting professionally right after high school, he did go to college at Cornell. While there, he signed with his first agent, who helped him network in New York City and find professional opportunities that wouldn't interfere with his college education. He managed to convince Cornell to let him spend his senior year at Juilliard, where he and Robin Williams were the only two students admitted to the advanced program in their year. And they also became very close friends with a friendship that lasted for the rest of his life. In 1974, he began appearing on the CBS soap opera Love of Life. In 1976, he made his Broadway debut in A Matter of Gravity, playing Katharine Hepburn's grandson. In 1978, he made his film debut in the submarine disaster movie Grey Lady Down. Of course, he's better remembered for his other 1978 film, Superman. Superman filmed in London, and you may remember that Reeve had become friendly enough with the Muppet team to secretly appear in the Bob Hope episode back in season 2, operating one of the Japanese pole vaulter Muppets. Now, Superman, enormous hit, made him an instant superstar. He used his superstardom to get involved in a number of causes, including the Special Olympics, Make-A-Wish, and Save the Children. Later in life, he would commit himself to environmental causes, protecting federal arts funding, and more. During this period in his life, he also began a relationship with Gay Exton, which lasted about 10 years. They never married, but they did have 2 children together. Reeve made sure to vary his post-Superman resume lest he get typecast, following up that film with the romantic fantasy Somewhere in Time, and following Superman 2 with a return to the stage, performing the front page at Williamstown, and then the 5th of July on Broadway. In 1985, Reeve appeared in a film adaptation of Anna Karenina, for which he learned to ride horses. Yes, folks, this is Chekhov's horse. More on that in a bit. But in the ensuing years, he trained and eventually began eventing, which I just learned is an equestrian competition combining dressage, cross-country, and show jumping. In 1987, Reeve met Dana Morosini, who would become his wife in 1992, the same year they had a son together. In 1995, Reeve was injured in a horse riding accident that left him paralyzed from the neck down and unable to breathe without a ventilator. He committed himself to intense exercises, which made small but somewhat miraculous improvements in his condition, but he nevertheless required round-the-clock care for the rest of his life. In 1996, 10 months after his accident, Reeve famously appeared at the Academy Awards to encourage Hollywood to take risks on meaningful films about social issues and received an overwhelming standing ovation. Already an experienced activist before his accident, Reeve now used his celebrity to bring attention to spinal cord injuries, the needs of disabled people, and advances in medical research, particularly related to stem cell research. He and Dana started a foundation that eventually merged with a couple of other spinal cord injury-related foundations to become what is now the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation, which is dedicated to finding cures for spinal cord injuries and improving the lives of people impacted by paralysis. In October 2004, Reeve died at the age of 52 from complications related to an infection, possibly brought on by an adverse reaction to a drug. Sadly, his wife Dana died of cancer about a year and a half later at age 44. A documentary called Super/Man, the Christopher Reeve story, premiered this year at Sundance and is expected to receive a wider release in theaters and on Max later this year. Who would like to share Christopher Reeve memories?
It is hard to understate what a big deal that movie was. And there were plenty of superhero things at the time. It's not like it was now, not like it is now at all. But like Wonder Woman was on TV, Batman 66 had happened. It was in the culture.
A lot of Saturday morning.
Yeah, there was Justice League and all that kind of stuff. But this movie coming out a year after Star Wars, especially, so they sort of had a playbook that they could use, was massive. And I've never been a comics guy. I've never really been a superhero guy. And I loved this movie. Still to this day, love this movie. Like, he is my Superman. He is the only one who I'm really interested in watching play the role. And yeah, it was a really huge deal. A friend of mine who is my age, and a straight woman, has commented that Christopher Reeve sort of defined her sexuality, like to this day in her 40s. It's like, oh yeah, no, that's my ideal man. And based on our Slack, I feel like he may have done the same for Michal just this week.
I've had a bit of an awakening this week, you guys. My primary association with Christopher Reeve up until a week ago was his accident and what I learned about him as he was living it in the 90s and 2000s. And anything that he had done in terms of actual acting work, I had not consumed until I watched Superman a week ago when I was a different person. And then I had to watch Superman 2, and then I had to watch that episode of Fairy Tale Theater. And I told you guys in our Slack that I waited through, Bernadette Peters did get a musical number to sing, but I waited through 55 minutes of batshit bonkers Fairy Tale Theater just to wait to see Christopher Reeve smile at Bernadette Peters the way he smiles at Lois Lane. And I told you guys, holy fuck, it was worth the wait. Oh my God. And then I had to seek out a program called Dinosaurs with an exclamation mark. That's how it's spelled. Where he just is tootling around the Natural History Museum with his jacket slung over his shoulder and talking to T-Rex skeletons. He's only in it for like under 4 minutes, but also worth it. Yeah, all just to chase this high of Christopher Reeve smiling at me the way he smiles at Lois Lane. And now I have a problem, and it's a huge problem, and it takes up a lot of my time and energy thinking about Christopher Reeve's smile, which is a smile that could launch 1,000 ships and should be the stuff of ballads and epic poems.
Well, if you want to see him in some surprisingly good old age makeup and get misty about what could have been had he not had an accident, you should watch Remains of the Day.
I don't know that I want to do that.
Not like old age makeup. They've just
Superman
aged
again.
him up slightly.
Or if you just want to get mad at a bonkers movie in which he's beautiful.
No, I'm
Somewhere in
depressed
Time.
enough as it is. I can't handle Somewhere in Time.
Somewhere in Time. Okay, so first of all, yes, I also grew up with the Superman movie, very foundational. Just a paragon, an absolute paragon. He's like a type that doesn't exist anymore. It's like him and Kevin Kline. Like they are like of a piece in my head for some reason. It's just that like late 70s, early 80s thing.
The Juilliard of it all.
Yeah. But yeah, I recently watched Somewhere in Time, and it's one of those things where you can just wind me up and let me go. I will rant for hours about the bonkosity of Somewhere in Time. It is a banana pants movie, but it's one of those movies kind of like The Rocketeer, where like the leads are like so like face meltingly beautiful that it doesn't matter how ridiculous the movie is. Also, I should say for the record, I love The Rocketeer. It's one of my favorite movies, but it's also a bonkers movie. But like, yeah, Christopher Reeve and Jane Seymour in Somewhere in Time are just like made of marble. It's incredible.
And they were having their own romantic tragedy as they were filming a romantic tragedy because they fell in love, but then they had to break up because his ex was having another baby or something.
The first baby, I think.
Oh, was it? Yeah.
But
yeah. They yeah.
So I tried to watch Somewhere in Time because I've heard that rant multiple times, and I couldn't do it. And my partner said to me, "Wait, is Christopher Reeve a bad actor?" And the thing that I then realized, actually watching Remains of the Day, which is not a fun movie, but is that like he's actually really good. He's obviously incredibly handsome, but he also, and we'll talk about this a lot, I'm sure, is very funny. And a thing about Somewhere in Time is that it is no fun whatsoever. And his character in Reigns of the Day like isn't comic relief, but like there's a lightness, there's a twinkle in his eye, there's that smile that Michal mentioned. And then you watch the Superman movies, and like he's so good at being Clark Kent. Like he is as good at being Clark Kent as he is at being Superman. And Superman also like has a wink to it. And I think like there's clearly a charm there. I worked at Williamstown in 2005, 6, and 7. So, you know, after he died, many years after he'd been there, and he was royalty. Like anybody, like the whole town was like, oh, remember when Christopher Reeve used to come here every summer? We named a sandwich after him at the sandwich place. Like, I mean, it was like he was mentioned with like such reverence. And like, I think he must have just been like a really good guy who people wanted to hang out with on top of being face meltingly beautiful.
Yeah, it seems like the Boy Scout attitude of Superman kind of extended to who he was as a person.
Well, Michal, I think I know the answer, but newfound appreciation of Christopher Reeve aside, what did you think of the episode?
I also appreciated this episode, and this was another one where, as with Liza, who was doing so much with her face, and as with Mark Hamill, who was doing so much with his face, I kind of enjoyed Christopher Reeve's face so much that I forgot to watch the Muppets during this episode, all the times that I watched this episode. But that said, this episode is a goddamn delight. Everybody go watch it.
Christy?
Yeah, I would say, using that weird metric that I've started using, that this is a middle of the top for me.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like tippy top, but he's so delightful, like so just like effortlessly Muppety and game, and like just I'm thinking about a smile, Michal. Like it's a thing. It's just like it overcomes you, and suddenly you can't even talk. But no, I didn't love the numbers in this, but overall I had a really good time.
David?
Well, that's interesting, because I was going to say that this sort of breaks my streak where even the songs that I didn't necessarily know going into it, I was pleasantly surprised by and enjoyed. And aside from Christopher Reeve, this is a great Miss Piggy episode. And, I've been listening to, there's a new Tough Pigs podcast called the Fabulous Miss Piggy podcast, where Danny Horn and friends are sort of tracing the evolution of the Miss Piggy character, which is giving me a new appreciation for seeing Piggy as she is at this moment. And this is such a great slice of Piggy sort of in transition from who she was when we first met her into who she will become post Muppet Show. And she's just, it's hard to steal a scene from Christopher Reeve, but she does it.
Yeah, all of that. He's exactly the kind of guest star we keep talking about wanting in terms of, being in sync with the Muppets and playing well with them. It's an interesting companion to the Mark Hamill episode where they keep referring to his fame as Superman, but he's not playing Superman. And with Mark Hamill, they made him actually play Luke Skywalker for half the episode. But yeah, no, I had a really good time. Let's get into it.
Christopher Reeve? 15 seconds to curtain, Christopher.
Oh, thanks a lot, Scooter. Hey, listen, can you tell me what these rats are doing in my dressing room?
I think it's the foxtrot.
Gee, most stars get groupies. I get rats.
An oldie but a goodie. And also, these dancing rats are actually adorable.
Are they?
Yeah. Well, one of them is, because one of them is Rizzo, who is not yet named Rizzo as far as we know, but it's our first Rizzo, which actually makes the beady eyes on the other rats stand out, to me anyway, because one of them has normal but eyes and looks real cute, and the rest of them are still kind of creepy.
I mean, they're creepy in a cute way, or vice versa.
They have been creepier. This is a good outing for them.
They also appeared when Gonzo blows his trumpet. He suddenly gets a rat infestation inside the O, which, again, I found cute. And then Statler and Waldorf making a possibly ripped from the headlines joke.
If this show was an airplane, it would have been grounded.
Yep. Let's go backstage.
Muppet Show backstage.
Backstage and also on stage this week, this is one of those weeks when the story is, hey, this famous person is here. The story is Christopher Reeve.
Oh, this story is Miss Piggy is super fucking horny for this famous person who's here.
That's also not the only time we've had that storyline. But yeah, Christopher Reeve is here. Piggy is absolutely besotted with him.
That's
And
a nice way to say it.
he does have at least a couple of superpowers. He's not playing Superman, but there is a phone booth handy. So, first of all, Piggy rushes into the theater after the opening number, so she's late. She looks magnificent. She's got this fur coat and fur hat, and her hair looks astounding. And she has this bedazzled garment bag. It's everything going on is gorgeous. And she launches herself at Kermit because she's planning to sing Never Before and Never Again, like she did in the movie. She's having a whole fit of passion, embracing Kermit. And then upon learning who the guest star is, she immediately loses interest in Kermit and drops him on the floor. And then also picks him up again and hurls him at the wall, just for good measure.
It was so romantic in the moonlight. Oh, Kermit, remember. Oh, we snuggled together.
Piggy, you'll get to sing the song again right after the guest star spot.
Oh, good. Well, who's the guest star?
Christopher Reeve.
Christopher Reeve? Christopher Perfect Body Reeve? Oh, Chrissy, I'm coming!
So, not to be that guy, but to be that guy, when she's describing Never Before, Never Again to Kermit to get him to remember, and she says, remember in the moonlight? That song took place in the daytime.
Uh-huh.
I was thinking that.
Yeah, I had that thought. We can all be that guy along with you.
I also have to shout out that we dropped a bowling ball Kermit on the floor sound. It makes me laugh every time out of context.
It's beautiful.
Whose fur do you think that is that she's wearing? Like when a
whom
Muppet
did
wears
she
fur,
kill?
yeah, like it feels a little bit wrong.
It's Maureen the Mink. I hope she didn't kill Maureen the Mink. So later in the episode, Kermit goes upstairs to let Piggy know that she's on next, and he finds that she has redecorated every available inch of her dressing room and some not available inches of her dressing room with pictures and cutouts and dolls of Christopher Reeve. And she is more or less making direct love to them.
Christopher! Oh, you beautiful brute!
Gee, she never called me a beautiful brute.
The audience responses in this episode, there's an awe for Kermit. There are screams when he announces who the guest star is. They're very involved.
It's a lot. This scene has foo-foo, and one of my favorite stupid things that gets me every time is when there's a single shot without a cut, and dog foo-foo exits frame and puppet foo-foo enters frame. And I don't know, it gets me every time. I made a gif of it. It's real cute.
Yeah, it's really well done. And they didn't need to do it. They built this whole little contraption for
it's like
dog Foo-Foo to
cat
come down.
tower, but Foo-Foo's a dog.
Yeah. And he descends this little spiral staircase kind of thing. And then suddenly Puppet Foo-Foo is up. It's great. Muppets are great. So Miss Piggy, of course, visits Christopher Reeve in his dressing room, unsurprisingly. This episode has a lot of high points, but I'm going to declare this point the highest one because, first of all, simultaneously, Christopher Reeve is taking off his Vet's Hospital scrubs, and also Piggy's reaction just says what we're all thinking. Also, Chris accidentally breaks his dressing room several times.
Oh, Christopher!
Hi, Miss Piggy.
Yes, you were wonderful in that last sketch.
Ah, come on.
Tell me, how did you get a job as Superman? Did someone see you lifting weights or waha?
Lifting weights? No. I just auditioned for the part. You know, like a lot of other actors.
Uh-huh.
But, strength really had nothing to do with it.
You're certain about that?
So he's broken the door off of the closet or the armoire, whatever we're calling it. It's revealed all of his outfits inside, and she looks inside the closet, and he goes, "I didn't bring it." And smiles that smile at her.
Although it's weird because in the back of the closet, there is some kind of a bright, like yellow and green, something that you can't really see that looks like a superhero costume, not Superman, maybe Robin. And it does sort of draw attention to itself in that moment.
Yeah, but he didn't bring it. Okay, so Piggy gets right to the point. She is here for exactly one thing.
Christopher, remember in Lois Lane. Could you use my body as a visual demonstration?
Well, I just put my arm around
Show
her.
me, yes.
Yeah.
And the other arm where?
Yeah, the other arm too.
And you held it tighter?
Well, I had to because otherwise she'd fall, right?
Tighter?
Yeah, sort of like that.
Tighter?
Excuse me, Chris.
Kermit?
Oh, Kermit! Christopher here was showing me how to, what were you doing?
Well, I was just showing her how I held Lois Lane in the movie.
In the movie, Lois Lane, yes.
That's the worst explanation I've ever heard.
Also not true. Having watched that scene about 7 times in the last week.
I mean, not to be that guy, and we're not a Superman podcast. The physics of that scene make absolutely no sense whatsoever.
If you have enough momentum and you're just holding Superman's hand, I don't know.
Gliding. It's very weird because he does hold her around the waist in a very romantic way, and that's actually lovely. But yeah, there's a whole stretch of it where I was so distracted by the fact that she should be dead.
To be fair, he's from another planet and he's a man who flies, so...
I mean, yes.
And then, unfortunately, this episode is not above making fat jokes.
Oh, Chrissy, please sweep me up and fly me over the towers of Metropolis, please.
Now?
Yes, now, please.
Oh, okay, Miss Piggy. It's just a short trip.
I'm
all right?
ready. Away!
Gee, I'm sorry, Miss Piggy. I don't think I can manage. Maybe you gained a few pounds.
Shut up and sing, Reeve.
So what I love about that moment is it starts as a puppet joke. I'm pretty sure, because like you basically see Frank's arm, like he lifts her, and like there's a point after which if he lifts her anymore, she'll be off of Frank, or Frank will be fully in the shot. And and Piggy screams, "Wait!" And I was like, that's a really fun little meta moment. And then it turns into the fat joke. But I would like to believe it was both, but then they needed to sort of bring it back to the reality of the scene. I don't know.
Yeah, but they also fling puppets around. It's not like they couldn't have figured out a way to do it.
No, I mean, yeah, they could have done it with a cut,
Yeah.
but I sort of liked I liked reading the moment that way before he said, "You've gained a few pounds."
Yeah. I mean, everything else about that number, because they sing the finale together. And apparently Christopher Reeve also plays piano and sings. I can't handle things. I've got a problem. I might have to go back in time and meet Christopher Reeve and have a whole terrible romance. Don't tell me the tragic ending of Somewhere in Time. I've already read about it. All right. We got to move on. We have the fat joke reemerge during the outro again. And then also the other thing I'm deducting points for in this episode, aside from the fat joke, is Christopher Reeve does this weird little mugging away from the camera when he tells bad jokes. He does this whole in pain grimace, which is unnecessary and weird.
I think that was specifically doing a very stylized vaudeville kind of thing. At least that's how I read it during Veterinarian's Hospital, and just assumed that this was kind of a carryover from that.
Yeah, it seemed like a reference.
During Vet's Hospital, and I was going to have this when we got there, but we can talk about it now. During Vet's Hospital, I actually never really thought about this before. The Muppets always laugh at their own jokes in Vet's Hospital. It's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's doing that, but he's a human. So he's doing this exaggerated Muppety laugh, and it looks really weird. And it's sort of charming, and right, they've never had a human in Vet's Hospital before. So it's new territory, but I noticed it, and I was always like, oh yeah, they do always laugh at their own jokes. I never even really thought about it because it's doesn't usually look strange.
And they sometimes groan at their own jokes, which is what he's doing when he does that weird face. Yeah. But it's a weird face for a human to make.
Tell me the truth, Chris. Yeah. You really could have lifted Miss Piggy if you tried, couldn't you?
Are you kidding? Usually I have to lift locomotives, and some of them are even heavier than she is.
Oh! I heard that, Reeve! You really is the Man of Steel!
Don't try to karate chop Superman. It won't end well for you.
Thank you!
You're welcome!
Oh, thank you.
But right now, it's opening number time, and the opening number happens to star me, which is why I'm dressed this way. So, what can I say but, let's hear it for me! Yeah!
Kermit is wearing the cutest little bathrobe to cover his costume.
He does seem very cozy.
I mean, Kermit in clothes is just always adorable, I think is the answer.
Yeah. So he takes us to the swamp, and by the swamp, I mean the disco.
And then I boogie up and down and shuffle right, slip and splashing in the moonlight night. Alligators with their teeth so bright, smile and sway there, and soon they're joining in the jamboree. Everybody's happy just like me. It's the disco frog.
I mean, if the world was going to have a disco duck, it makes sense that it would also have a disco frog.
Mm-hmm.
And this disco frog is, unsurprisingly, a Muppet original. It originated on the album Sesame Disco and was written by Joe Raposo. Just imagine if Frank Sinatra had covered this.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so Sesame Disco came out in 1979, and the song then subsequently appeared here, and then a couple months later on Sesame Street. And yeah, this is a weird one because, it takes place in the swamp, but there's some weird, like, is it chroma keyed? Like, what's happening? Because like you can fully see the puppeteers in like half of the shots.
They're in black. They're in these sort of black robes with hoods. I mean, I think it is chroma key, but like as opposed to a blue screen or a green screen that I suspect would have worked better, I think they're doing it on black. I think it's like the was it Marisa Berenson with the dancing feather boas where everybody was like a little bit transparent. I think it's the same technique as that, and it's just this technology was fairly primitive at the time. But last week, David said that the two Mark Hamill's was the worst effect we've ever seen on the Muppet Show, and nope. Now it has been topped.
I don't know. I thought this was charming. Even if you can see the puppeteers a little bit, I liked the effect. I liked how everyone was like a little bit see-through.
I mean, it was
cool.
fine. I mean, I like seeing puppeteers like because I'm a nerd. Like please show me the puppeteers. But when the intention is to not do that, and you can very clearly see them, and it's actually mentioned in the wiki, which makes me think that this is not just an HD problem, but it's always been this way.
Yeah, it's cool to see a little bit of how they accomplish things, and it's fun that some of the puppets are a little bit see-through too because of how they put this together, but there clearly is a lot of technical planning that had to go into creating this number. So it is an accomplishment more than it is a failure.
Right.
Look, I've never taken Quaaludes, but the experience of watching this is sort of what I imagine it's like.
The one time that my mom did.
Yes.
Yes.
She's gonna kill me for telling this story. Yeah, my mom did Quaaludes exactly once when I was a kid, and I found out about it years later as an adult because she just casually mentioned, she's like, "Remember that time they did Quaaludes?" I was like, "Absolutely not. You gotta give me more context than that." Mm-hmm. And she's like, "Yeah." She's like, "Remember that time when you were like 9 and I like came in and jumped on the bed?" I was like, "Oh, I was 9. I just thought that we were having a fun time. Like what?"
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, she only did it once. But
the rest of my case.
Yeah. Yeah, so like the jumping is definitely part of the experience, or at least in my sample of one.
I also just now learned that they're called Quaaludes because it's a portmanteau of quiet interludes.
What? No. The Sesame version of this is equally bonkers in a slightly different way. It's all a lot of fun.
This is also strangely one of those songs that's been translated and dubbed in a million languages. There is a supercut on YouTube where it just like switches language every line or so, which we can include in the show notes.
Well, that's fun. I only watched it in Hebrew. I didn't know how many more languages there were.
A lot.
Apparently.
Sesame,
yeah,
does that.
It's kind of their deal.
I like that tune. How about you?
I like New York in June. How about you?
Their choreography when they do that, they like wave their little arms around in unison. It's really cute.
I just realized that I should have put in information about that song.
Oh yeah.
Oh well, we can. I mean, it's a Burton Lane song. It's from An MGM musical.
Pop quiz, David.
Babes on Broadway.
Thank you.
And it was nominated for Best Song if you're playing our Muppetology Bingo.
Yeah, and we got Joe Raposo in there.
Yeah. Burton Lane and Ralph Freed.
Huh? You have that at your fingertips, or are you reading off something?
I'm reading it off of something.
I was going to be incredibly impressed.
Yeah. No, I just looked it up. Brother of noted creep Arthur Freed.
Ah.
Babes on Broadway is a Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney movie, so
yeah,
they get to debut this song.
All right, let's get Shakespearean up in here.
Okay, so before we get to the next song, the Muppets are in a little bit of a jam.
Gonzo, you're supposed to be doing the first act of William Shakespeare's Hamlet while hanging from your nose.
I can't go on.
Why not?
I sprained my nose.
Well, how did that happen?
Rehearsing with heavy shoes.
But listen, we rented the scenery and the costumes and everything. Scooter!
Yeah, boss?
Do we have anybody else backstage that can play Hamlet?
Well, there's Chris Reeve. He's real good, and he's not busy till Vet's Hospital.
Good thought. Just stall for me, would you?
How long is the show within the show that Gonzo was going to do the entire first act of Hamlet?
I'm sure he's going to do it very quickly.
Yes.
Yeah, it's several times speed, but that's not even then what they do.
No.
They don't do Act 1. Anyway, Christopher Reeve, fortunately, is just hanging out backstage. He tells Kermit that he's been hanging out by the phone booth in case trouble breaks out. So that's fun. And he's just sitting around and reading comic books with a bunch of rats. Just having a grand old time.
And I was wondering if you'd like to fill in for Gonzo's Hamlet spot.
Hamlet?
Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you like to play Hamlet?
No.
But every actor wants to play Hamlet.
No, not really.
Well, this is your big chance then.
Okay.
Yeah, but you'll have to wear tights.
Well, it won't be the first time.
I can't imagine that Christopher Reeve did not want to do Hamlet. Just from what I've learned about him in the last few days.
It's a good joke, though.
It is. I'm sure he had Hamlet aspirations.
When he's hanging out with the Rat Pack, he's reading a copy of Action Comics, which is one of the titles that Superman appears in. In fact, the first title before there was a comic book called Superman. And in this particular issue, there is a line that makes reference to the Muppets. What is totally wild about that is that it is totally coincidence. That was just the issue that would have been on newsstands at the time that this episode was being filmed. And that's just like one of those happy accidents.
Huh. So that's how big the Muppets were. We've already learned how big Superman was in the world. The Muppets were ubiquitous.
Yeah, in the issue, Lana Lang compares the villain to an escaped Muppet.
Checks out. So Christopher Reeve saves the day. He enters the phone booth. He ducks down and he pops back up again in Elizabethan garb and also with a newly acquired accent. So he goes onto the stage. He attempts to do Hamlet's soliloquy and he is interrupted by Fozzie and then Beauregard and Link and a wisecracking Yorick Skull. This is not the Yorick from Sam and Friends. This is a different Yorick Skull. And this one sings.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Brush up your Shakespeare. Start quoting him now. Brush up your Shakespeare, and the women you will wow.
Just declaim a few lines from Othello,
Yes, sir.
and they'll think you're one heck of a fella.
If your blonde won't respond when you flatter, tell her what Tony told Cleopatra.
So this is Brush Up Your Shakespeare from Kiss Me Kate. It's a Cole Porter song from 1948. Kiss Me Kate won the first Tony for Best Musical in 1949 and has since spawned 2 Broadway revivals, a 3D movie,
Yeah.
and that's incredible. That is absolutely incredible. And 4 TV versions. And the original cast album is in the Grammy Hall of Fame. And funny connection between this episode and Kiss Me Kate. Kiss Me Kate features an unrelated character named Lois Lane.
It's a really good point. The 3D movie contains the first ever Bob Fosse choreography on film. He did not choreograph.
Really?
Yeah, his pas de deux in Tom, Dick, or Harry, he did himself. So he did not choreograph the movie, but it's like 1 minute Fosse choreography, and it sticks out as not being anything like anything else in the movie, and it's great. And I imagine it was slightly terrifying in 3D.
Oh man,
this does get shown in 3D revival houses every so often. If you ever have the chance, it's a lot of fun. It's one of those movies where they, go out of their way to do 3D stuff, like have Ann Miller tap dance Too Darn Hot on top of a coffee table while she like throws things off of her outfit at you.
That's great.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, I have a real fondness for this song because when I was in high school, I became the de facto accompanist in my musical theater class. And for our final, we all had to do like a solo or a duet. And for extra credit, we had to like do staging with it. And there were these two guys in the class who were not really actors or singers. And they decided to do this song, but they like came up with this weird, elaborate thing with like dramatic light cues and murder. And it was just one of those things where it made no sense, and it was the funniest thing I've ever seen to this day. Like I remember this like dramatic light cue and this guy falling to his knees and sobbing, and they'll all kowtow, and yeah. So
okay.
So I realized I just said Tom, Dick, or Harry. He plays Tom, Dick, or Harry. It's from this moment on is the number. This is the perfect amount of this song. I mean, I also like the song and I like this show.
But it has many, many verses and goes on and on and on.
Yeah, there are jokes missing from this version that I wish were there, but oh my god, it goes on forever. It's like, this is exactly right.
The Coriolanus one's pretty
cool. Yeah.
My complaint is that this is already a boulderized lyric. So by saying heck of a fella instead of hell of a fella, they ruin a great triple rhyme.
Yeah.
Unforgivable.
True. Yes. Just because they mentioned renting the sets, this set is great. I hope they use this again. It's so beautiful. It's a castle set. It's not all in the straight line. Like they use it really well. I hope we get to see it again because it looks expensive.
Yeah, and there are cool angles.
It's also built up really tall, so they probably are very comfortable puppeteering underneath it.
Yeah, and Chris doesn't really go anywhere.
Speaking of the puppeteering, Jerry Nelson is playing the Yorick skull, and they do a lot of things where various characters, Christopher Reeve, yes, but also Fozzie, like pick up the skull and move the skull around, and they do such a good job of preserving the illusion. And even if you're paying close attention, like you might see a little bit of effort to make sure that it's coming off or going onto the hand, but I don't think you ever actually see a hand or an arm.
Think there's a cut almost every time. Like there's a change in camera angle, but they do it in a place where that change in camera angle feels totally natural, so it doesn't call attention to itself, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really seamless. Also, at one point, he dribbles the skull like a basketball and then shoots it into a part of the castle. And Fozzie says, "Hamlet 2, audience nothing," which is fun. Also, song cue, "You're welcome" is just one of my favorite Muppet jokes. It's so doofy and so wonderful. And after they say it, instead of doing that unsettling mugging face, Christopher does a little wink at the audience and a little excited shuffle because they're about to start singing, and like he's excited to sing.
Also, because he's in Elizabethan garb, his chest is exposed, and that just brings everything to a whole other level.
Yeah. No.
I was looking at his face.
Sure you were.
It's like a deep V. If you haven't watched it, let's be clear. I mean, it's very, very attractive. But like, he's not shirtless.
I guess I must have looked at his chest when he did the little shimmy. When they say "the women you will wow," he does.
That is the moment to look at it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he does.
Shakes what the good Lord gave him.
I'll always regret that I didn't study Shakespeare when I was a kid.
When you were a kid, you could have talked to Shakespeare.
So now, in the UK spot, let's spend some time singing about the least British Muppet there is.
Dear sir,
they call it Samsung.
This show is sick and weird.
Catchy as can be. The melody, they call it Samsung.
That is not my song. I do not have a song.
Nothing on your mind.
There are
And
Get
then
off
you
the table.
find the Sam song.
There are rats here.
Why it makes you grin, gets under your skin, is only a song can do.
It's Sam's song. And shockingly, this is not a Muppet original. This is a song that has been around since 1950. It was written by Lou Quadling, who wrote the music, and Jack Elliott, who wrote the lyrics. And it was originally recorded by Joe Fingers Carr and the Car Hops.
That's a great
Does he
thing for
know?
a band.
And another version that same year by Bing Crosby and his son Gary, Bing Bing Bing,
Bing, bing, bing.
was the fourth most popular song of 1950, according to Billboard. It was on the Billboard bestsellers chart, the precursor to the Hot 100, for 19 weeks. And it peaked at number 3. And there was another version in 1962 by Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr., noted friends of noted Joe Raposo, Stan Frank Sinatra, that peaked at number 94. So yeah, it was around.
And I don't know the original version, but both the Bing version and the Sammy and Dean version are extremely charming.
Yeah.
Like it's just like pals palling around, and it's a lot of fun. And I think this version's a lot of fun too. It's a little hard to tell from the audio, but as the sketch goes on, various Muppets kind of wander in and join the song. And in the past, I have besmirched Bo's singing. So let me say that I thought his contribution here was very lovely. Both he sings and then he plays harmonica. And despite Sam calling him a lump that plays harmonica, I don't. I think he was just fine.
I mean, he's not a lump that plays harmonica.
There's a whistle break in this, which is performed by Nigel, and I found Nigel's whistling face both impressive as puppetry and deeply unsettling.
And especially because Sam knows it's coming.
Yeah.
He sees Nigel and says, "Don't whistle."
Well, there's a lyric about it, I think, right?
I thought that Nigel is just a harbinger of whistling.
I think it's that Beauregard works better as a backup singer. Like I think it's like the right amount of,
Yeah.
It's give him a solo and it's a little disturbing, but
I was really charmed by his solo.
keep him in that 20 feet from Samdom place.
And this song did previously appear on Sam and Friends, which I guess
That
makes
makes
sense.
There you go.
Logical. All right, well, let's class things up a little bit.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
We forgot the punchline at the end of the sketch. Kermit comes by and is like, and everyone has left, and Sam, of course, is humming this because it's an earworm. And Kermit's like, "Hey, Sam, what's the song?" He's like, "Oh, I don't know, some stupid thing. What is it? I don't know, Fred's song." Love that.
Do we need to talk about the Sam puppet?
Oh, we should talk about the Sam puppet.
So something is going on with the Sam puppet in this sketch. I don't know if he's molting or if the puppet was disintegrating or if this was a new puppet that had some pink worked into it. But it did look like some of the feathers had fallen out or some pink was worked. Something was off.
Well, maybe some of the flocking was falling off and it was exposing the foam underneath. I don't know.
It was unsettling.
I just want to say flocking.
Because it's not the flocking, it's the feathers that fell out, I think. Something is going on with Sam. I don't know if he's just going through his cycle and he'll regrow the feathers next time.
Meanwhile, let's send in the bulls.
Whoa, wait, hold it!
So it's the Toreador song from Carmen by Georges Bizet from 1875. Shout out to the public domain. We've talked a little bit about Bizet before, so we won't go too deep, but I wanted to throw out at least a couple more fun things that I read about him. There was a very funny quote on his Wikipedia page that says, "He founded no school and had no obvious disciples or successors." Womp womp.
Here's another fun thing.
Yeah, okay. So not fun, but yeah, he was 36 when he died, and he died a couple months after Carmen premiered and flopped. But after he died, the critics immediately reassessed it and changed their minds. So,
which they should. Carmen's a banger.
Carmen's great. Yeah, it's bangers all the way down.
It's a great introductory opera for people who aren't sure if they like opera, because it's like the closest that opera comes to being musical theater without crossing that line. Like there's more talking and less recitative, and the arias are more like songs. Like they have sort of familiar song form. They don't go on for so long.
Yeah,
it's an easy to follow story.
Yeah.
Which is probably why 100 years after it premiered, some sitcom writers assumed that their audience would get this joke where they reference the Toreador song without actually ever naming it.
Yeah. Yeah. So Fozzie is just plunking away at the piano, and then a Toreador comes in and starts duetting with him on the piano, and then it summons a bunch of bulls. Yeah, it's a good joke. So we get a bit of a fake out. Let's just listen to it.
Never before. Ralphie, I hope I did not hurt your Bozzy Wozzy.
Yep, that's as much as we actually get of Never Before, Never Again, which we've already discussed. We talked about it on our Muppets Go Hollywood episode, written by Paul Williams and Kenny Asher for the Muppet movie.
This bit reminded me that at this point now, we have a new performer performing Rolf's Hands, because now it's Steve Whitmire when it had previously been, we think, Frank Oz. And I wondered if the whole slamming the piano down on his hands thing was a way to haze the new guy.
That feels very possible.
Well, I hope they didn't hurt his little posy wozzies. Also, Miss Piggy just like flinging her arms open and that somehow knocking over the piano cover case. What?
Lid.
Cover.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lid. But she knew that was going to happen. She had a plan. It's impressive.
And her plan involved singing this song instead while Christopher Reeve, actual beautiful, accomplished pianist Christopher Reeve,
goddamn,
played for her.
East of the sun and west of the moon. Sing, Chris.
I will build a dream house of love, dear.
Oh, near to the sun in the day.
Yes. Near to the moon at night.
We live in a lovely way, dear. Living on love and pale moonlight.
It's East of the Sun and West of the Moon, which is a jazz standard that was originally written by Brooks Bowman, who was an undergraduate student at Princeton University for the 1934 Princeton Triangle Club production of Stags at Bay. And it has sort of become a signature song for Princeton, for the Princeton singing groups, but it's also been recorded by many, many, many people, including Ella Fitzgerald, Tony Bennett, Louis Armstrong, and noted Joe Bozo Stan Frank Sinatra, who recorded it several times, actually. But his first and most notable recording of it was with Tommy Dorsey and his orchestra.
So it only just occurred to me while you were talking about Christopher Reeve playing the piano that I don't think Christopher Reeve can be playing the piano because it's still Rolf's piano, which means
he's actually playing the piano, though.
I mean, but that was like it looks real, like right. He's doing the right things. Yeah.
Yeah. There was only one moment when I had a question of whether he was actually like either way. He can play the piano.
Right. That was my question,
that was apparent.
I did some research. There's some very hot pictures of him playing the piano to be found on the interwebs.
No.
They will be in the show notes. Please
No, I
send them
need to
along.
be done with this after we record. I can't keep looking up Christopher Reeve pictures.
But like, right, I assume
need to move on with my life.
Unless they swapped out the piano, right? I think that Rolf's piano doesn't usually make noise because there is somebody playing piano for him off stage. So, in fact, there's a quite famous photo that I now know is from this episode of the backstage shenanigans. But anyway, they could have also had two pianos. I don't know. Piggy's dress is also amazing. This is presumably the dress she was carrying in the sparkly garment bag earlier. And it's great.
So that was before she even knew that Christopher Reeve was in this episode. This dress was intended for Kermit to see. Oh well.
Never mind that jazz. Listen, Turkey.
What? And get out of show business?
So this week in show business, there's a Muppet News Flash, a deadly Muppet News Flash.
Police announced today that a killer lamb had escaped from the Department of Agriculture's maximum security sheep station. This lamb is one of a new kind of sheep that has been bred to hunt wolves and is extremely dangerous. This killer lamb has been trained to attack at the sound of a bell. Hello?
Yeah, this is a full-on sheep attack. They both go down, and you see the little lamb tail wiggling as it's presumably mauling the newsman.
The lamb is so cute.
It's so cute.
I think it's one of the lambs from last week, but it's like the way it's staged and filmed, like it's just barely above the desk, sneaking up on him. It's so adorable.
Yeah, it sneaks up like Jaws and and a little Bert laugh. It's great. It's a good lamb. So, Muppet Labs this week. How long has it been since you thought about the temperature and lubrication of cow teats? Too long, you say.
Heard of cows?
Yes, cows just love sliding into a warm, cozy milking machine on these frosty mornings, don't they, Beaker?
Nope. Nope.
Absolutely not.
They love it, though. What, you're not going to trust
Bunsen? They
Bunsen?
don't, apparently.
Well, Beaker doesn't love it either when his hair gets caught in all of the teat holders of the milking machine.
There's probably a technical term for those, right?
Teeth holders.
The teat graspers.
Keep them away from your puppet hole.
It's the milking cluster.
Good God.
No, I hate it.
Well, rather than milking Beaker, it gives him some kind of Shirley Temple-style perm once he gets his hair out of it.
Why, Beaker, you're hauntingly attractive today.
Yeah.
Also called a teat cup.
Good God.
There, okay.
So this is not the first time that Bunsen has expressed some interest in Beaker.
But it's certainly the horniest.
Every time it reminded me of this one Homestar Runner Teen Girl Squad cartoon where Strong Bad describes someone as being very makey outy tonight.
Bunsen is indeed feeling very makey outy tonight, as are the rest of the Muppets. There's even one moment when, this is to dial us back a little bit earlier, when Christopher Reeve pops into the phone booth and pops out in Elizabethan garb. Kermit is so flustered. He's like, "You may introduce me, my good frog." And Kermit is, yeah, he's stuttering, and he's trying to figure out how to go introduce him because Christopher Reeve's presence is just overwhelming. This is a very horny episode. Not just for us, also for the Muppets.
I did think that Bunsen looked terrible in this sketch. Like the puppet looks kind of like wrinkly and run down. And we were discussing this before we started recording, and someone suggested that maybe it was supposed to make Bunsen look older, which I don't think was the intention. But then separately, I think on the Tough Pigs Discord, someone suggested that they have the relationship of like a professor and like a lab assistant college student, which then introduces the concept of like the age gap into the Bunsen Beaker dynamic. And I just have to say, stop it.
Yeah. Don't care for it.
Yeah. I've been noticing those neck wrinkles for a while now. They were definitely there last episode. And so I just thought it was a choice, but who knows? I've never read Beaker as a college student ever.
He's an assistant.
I never really thought
I've never really thought about it either, which I think.
But like, who are lab assistants, right? They're usually grad students.
I guess.
Like or is lab assistant also a job for grown-ups?
Yeah,
Maybe.
I'm sure it is.
Maybe not that graduate students aren't grown-ups. They are, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Sorry to all of our graduate student listeners.
Yeah. I assumed that the wrinkles under Bunsen's chin were a problem with the puppet and not a deliberate choice, because it looked like maybe it was fleece that had been badly glued or that was coming loose. But yeah, either way, Beaker is his assistant and he's the boss, regardless of how old they are. So.
Right. I'm not saying that like if they were the same age that it would make it better. But again, as we go down this path, I just say stop.
Yes. Thank you for going on the record with that. So this week on Veterinarian's Hospital, Rolf is getting a taste of his own medicine. So he's here to play the patient. Christopher Reeve, a human on the vet's hospital set, is here to play the doctor.
Oh, no! Oh, come now, this won't hurt a bit.
Oh, it'll hurt this bit if you don't get laughs with it.
Well, I'm not trying to get laughs. I don't want to set a precedent on the show.
Touche!
Now, just relax. I'll have you fixed in no time.
Please, never say fix to a dog.
Well, anyway, you won't feel any pain. I'm going to put you to sleep.
Oh, no, never say put to sleep to a dog.
No, come. This has gone far enough. Chrissy, let us go to the nurse's lounge and...
Yes?
Lounge!
And then he does this thing where, like, he grabs Miss Piggy, and every time he reaches for her, Rolf pops back up out of the hospital bed, and he keeps, like, letting go of her and pushing Rolf back down, and it's this bizarre slapstick thing that works quite nicely. And also, at the end of Vet's Hospital, the narrator chimes in, and the Muppets always look up to see where the voice is coming from. It's always wonderful when Muppets do it, but when Muppets plus Christopher Reeve are looking up and wondering where the voice is coming from, it is fucking exquisite.
It's great.
I also love that the voice says, like, tune next week when Dr. Reeve says, he's like, I'm not back next week.
I'm out of here.
Fuck you say.
Muppets are great, and also apparently Christopher Reeve is great.
Well, this has been an evening to remember.
Why?
I forgot.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Muppeturgy. Join us in 2 weeks for our discussion of the Linda Carter episode. You can find us on social media at Muppeturgy or on the web at Muppeturgy.com. You can buy our merch at Muppeturgy.com/store. Our theme music was composed and performed by Christy Bauer. Our show logo was created by Todd Bryan Backus, and this episode was edited by me, David Levy.
Yay!
Oh, why, hello, the ugly one. You're looking so makey-outy tonight.